it's been ingrained in me, and I think in a lot of people, that there are certain kinds of behaviour that invite rape, and that is incredibly wrong. But if you were party to any of them, like I was, dressed up, not wearing as much as you maybe would be, drinking, you just feel like they're going to say to you, well, you did this, and what did you expect was going to happen?
I found it very difficult to realise it was rape because it happened in a relationship, and it took me years to realise that I'd been raped, and I didn't start dealing with it and coming to terms with it until like three years after.
If you're selling sex for a living, then maybe society thinks it's a risk you take, that men are going to rape you, you're going to sell sex anyway, but if they decide they're not going to pay you, or you don't want to do it with them, or you don't like the look of them, or you say no to them for whatever reason, then because you put yourself in that position, it's your fault. You shouldn't be a prostitute. You haven't got a choice to say no. You shouldn't be taking that risk in the beginning, which is a risk you're taking, and you are at risk of rape and violent crime all the time.
One key problem is that when sex workers come forward to report, the police seem focused on prosecuting sex workers for prostitution offences and not on pursuing their violent attackers.
We got told that he would be arrested 2 weeks after I made the allegation. It took 4 months. 4 months. And in that time, they called me in, and the detective sat me down and asked me how a teenage child would understand what rape was, and that I had to take responsibility for my actions that night and realise that these things can escalate if I let them, and that I had the option to pull out now if I wanted to.
Courts were allowed to scrutinise me, and they were allowed to go into my medical records, they were allowed to look into my past history, and they would use anything that they could use against me to twist the story and make me look guilty. They used my dad's death as a means to say that I was accusing this guy of rape as a means of getting attention, which I was lacking from my dad and my mum. They saw that in my medical records I used to have depression, which they decided that they would use as well to say that I was just acting out, again trying to get more attention. They also insinuated that I dressed provocatively and that I was somehow asking for it because I wear low-cut tops, and they did try to smear my image in every way they could, never mind the fact that I was a child.
As I understand it, the CPS didn't prosecute because they didn't believe they could win the case. I found out through victim support that I could apply for compensation from the Criminal Injuries Compensation Authority, I think it's called. And so I did complete all of that paperwork, just for the sake of the fact that I wanted something official to say it wasn't right what had happened. 2 years later, I finally had a decision from them, and they told me that they couldn't give me any compensation because of the reasons why the CPS hadn't pressed charges. And they gave three reasons. One, that it was that I didn't report it straight away, and the second was that I had been drinking, and the third the third was that he had photographs on his telephone which he showed to the police and said demonstrated consensual activity.
To go and report to the police about the violence that you may have suffered, you have to weigh up what is going to happen to not only yourself but to your family, to your community. Are the police going to take it seriously? Are they going to be racist and sexist towards you and towards your family?
When these people were speculating and gossiping about me, it felt like they were reinforcing the feelings that I received from the rape itself. I felt, even more humiliated and even more degraded. And when people do things like that, when people blame the victim rather than blaming the perpetrator, what they're doing is they're enforcing the idea in his head that he can get away with it, and they're allowing him to think that if he does something like this, it doesn't matter because it's just the girl who's going to be trashed. It won't matter to him.
You get released from detention center, and when you are released, they'll release you with, let's say, with no recourse to public funds. So you are released from detention center, you're homeless, you don't have money, you have no rights to work, you can't collect any benefits whatsoever. So it's up to you to fend for yourself. So most of women, they do have friends and families that they can go and live with in UK, but when these people that you feel that you can trust, they know your situation and they take advantage of that. Most of the time you find that it's sex violence, and you are in this position that you feel that, okay, if I report this, where am I going to live? If I report these people, how am I going to survive? Who is going to look after me? Because the government has already washed their hands off me. And when they do get the courage saying, okay, let me open my mouth, let me go and report this to the authorities, the first thing you get when you get to the police station is, what is your status? Before they can even find out of how hurt are you, how did this happen, who did this to you, the first thing is, what's your status? And before you know it, they're now focusing on, they're calling UKBA instead of calling a doctor to do the necessary tests. The UKBA is the one that is being involved. So before you know it, you've been raped, you've been victimized, you've been sexually violated, and you find yourself in the back of the van back to the detention center.
One of the things I found very empowering actually was last year's SlutWalk. It was actually very pivotal for me to realise and actually remember how many other men I've gone out to dinner with and drunk with, and even sometimes invited home, and then decided actually I didn't want to do anything, and that they didn't rape me. And the only thing that was different the night I was raped is that I was at dinner with a rapist. I don't like the term victims because we're still here, we are survivors. Every day we are getting out of bed, or sometimes not, but every day we are making it through another day. And that makes us strong and it makes us survivors.
Wherever we go, yes means yes and no means no. However we dress, wherever we go, yes means yes and no means no. However we dress, wherever we go, yes means yes and no means no.
It's made me a stronger person because since I've started talking about it, and since I've been in counselling, I've become a lot more aware of who I am and what I want from life, and I've just become a lot happier. Because after the rape, even though I didn't admit to myself that it was rape, I was really depressed. I started taking drugs. I started to develop an eating disorder, and I've dealt with these things, and it's just made me a happier person now, and I've become a lot stronger. I feel that I can get through anything or master anything because I've mastered this.
I repeated many times negative sexual experiences because that was the model that I had. In fact, what I found was that I was able to really recover a full sense of my sexuality.
to a point where I started to reconnect with the person I was before all this happened, and that person was someone who wanted to go to university and wanted to live a good life and be happy and have fun. And when I got back in touch with that part of myself, I just thought, you know, there's no way that I can sit around and, you know, just hate myself for something that isn't my fault. And I found that when I started focusing on the things that I used to love, it took my mind off the whole incident, and soon enough it stopped being the thing that defined me, and it just became something that happened in my past.
I felt like I needed to prove that regardless of what he did to me and the impact that it had on my life, that I could still hold on to one thing. And if that meant going into school every single morning and getting the crap ripped out of me, I still had to do it. And it's been 2 years this year since it happened, and I'm still at the same school as is he.
Yes means yes and no means no. However we dress, wherever we go. Yes means yes and no means no. However we dress, wherever we go. Yes means yes and no means no.
It's not an overnight fix at all. It's going to take time, and you're going to have to be patient. But you can work towards having a life again, liking yourself again. And it's incredibly important that you do, because you are important. Whoever you are incredibly important, and there are people who love you, and they will miss you if you're not there.
Wherever we go. Yes means yes.